Okay, welcome, dear viewers. Welcome to episode 3 of my deep dive into Lamentations of the Flame Princess. Today I'm going to be talking about the common adventuring activities. Before we begin, though, I just want to let everyone know episode 3 of the Lamentations of Elemental Evil campaign has been posted. If that's your thing, please check it out. I also wanted to give a shout out to Mason May. Recommended I take a look at the Book of Antithesis. I have every intention of looking at that book and talking about it. It's a very interesting book, and I think I'm going to do it sooner rather than later because it's just it's a book that's very unique. So thanks for the recommendation. It's already on my list, but I'm going to bump it up. So okay, let's begin here. All right. All right. So the common adventuring activities, they're common because this is what adventurers do. This is what they have to do to succeed in whatever dungeon delve or hex crawl they find themselves. I think it is a really good idea to organize them as such. In prior editions and versions of this game, D&D generally speaking, they're sort of all over the place, and it's not entirely clear if a fighter can slink about if need be. It's not entirely clear, if a dwarf can really, unlock a door or something. So putting it in this sort of context, I think, really helps for organizational purposes, but also clearly defines what it is to be an adventurer. These are your skills. You know, um, some of them are not exactly defined in the rule book. They pop up under other headings and checks that might come up, like foraging, for example. Magic is included. I mean, players are going to be slinging spells, so these are common activities. Um, and the skills are resolved in a real simple, X in six chance mechanic. Everyone starts with a 1 in 6 chance, and then of course the specialist can increase them because the specialist is, well, a specialist. Uh, in this image that I have down at the bottom, or near the bottom, is the physics skill. That is not a skill in the book. This is included because this is just a form fillable PDF I picked up, and we're using the physics skill in my Lamentations of Elemental Evil campaign. I'm calling it Chirurgeon to give it more of a medieval flair, but it's a skill written by Mark Hess, and we'll talk about it later. It's a very good skill. It's probably one of the better homebrew skills I've seen out there. It's Everyone should use it, but we'll talk about that. Okay, so let's begin. Architecture. Okay, so architecture, when I've seen this skill previously listed, it was under like a dwarf heading where it's like, oh, dwarves have a 2 in 6 chance of noticing a shifting wall or, a sloping passage. There was really no name for it. So giving it a name, I think, is great. Architecture. And by giving it a name and clearly defining what it does, I think really drives home the importance of this skill. And I'm quoting from the book here: clues, warnings, and rewards are built into the very structure of a character's surroundings. Everyone, not just the dwarf, everyone can determine the age of structures, see if there's a shifting or sloping passage, whether a passage is unsafe to travel, determine cultural or the methods of construction, things like that. And it's not an exhaustive list. The referee has a lot of discretion with all of these skills, but this one in particular, to help push the game forward and allow the players some room to sort of be creative in how they use some of these skills, architecture being one of them. It is not a passive ability. It takes a full turn to use. I think this is a departure from earlier versions of the game. I know in at least second edition D&D, the elf could just sort of search things without really actively searching, and I hated that because I had to like play the character for the player by like reminding them to make a die roll or something. I just thought it was ridiculous. Anyway, you don't really see that with these skills at all, and architecture is no different. So, very cool skill. Uh, uh, Bushcraft is the next one. This one there isn't a real definition. It pops up under foraging and hunting and getting lost. Um, but I'm not an outdoorsy guy. I know what bushcraft is, so I think someone with a little bit more of an outdoorsy background might be able to get more use out of bushcraft. But so it's nice that there's some example of how it can be used in the book. If you run out of food, there's rules kind of summarized here for foraging and hunting. It will reduce your travel time, but can generate up to D4 meals at the cost of D10 ammunition. On a successful roll, of course. Getting lost, I was actually surprised, is actually really hard in Lamentations. I figured it'd be the other way around, considering how Lamentations has this reputation for being so difficult. But first, the referee has to roll a 1 in 6. And then that triggers a secret bushcraft roll. And then when on a failure, the party veers off course. In my Lamentations of Elemental Evil campaign, the players have left Hamlet, but they're on a road, so I didn't even bother making any rolls at this point because they know where they are. But this will be interesting because it's a pretty big hex map that I made. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that pans out. I think there's some other potential uses here. You might be able to use it for like herbalism type stuff or poison craft. Get creative. That's I think the uh, sort of a double-edged sword of not having some of these skills clearly defined in the rule book. You're required to think about it. It's nice, but then sometimes you might be a deer caught in the headlights if someone's asking you a question and you're not 100% sure how to resolve it. But anyway, that's bushcraft. Climbing. All right. Everybody can climb. 1 in 6 chance to climb a wall or other sheer surface without obvious handholds. Obviously, the specialist is going to be better at it if they put the points into it. Um, Raji clearly states it is not to be used when there is a rope or a ladder. I don't know how many 5e games I've been in where the referee calls for a climbing check when I declare I want to climb a ladder or rope or something. It makes no sense. I'm really glad that he actually states that here, because yeah, you shouldn't be calling for stuff like that. You just shouldn't. If your two hands are free and it's a rope or a ladder, you succeeded. Okay. Obviously, failure indicates you fall at a random point in the climb. I like how he also notes that it's random. So you could fall from 5 feet, which isn't going to be too bad, or 15 feet, going to take some damage. So, all right, languages. Languages is one of two of the skills that gets actually modified by your ability scores. It's modified by intelligence. So if you have a 14 intelligence, that should be a +1. So you would have a 2 in 6 chance of knowing a language. Now, this is a radical departure, at least in my mind, from other versions of Dungeons and Dragons and earlier versions of the game. When you make a character in second edition, for example, you have 4 languages to choose from, depending on your intelligence. Let's say you have 4, and then you just pick from a list, and it's just sort of like arbitrary. Well, do I know Giant? I guess I'll know Giant. I guess I'll know Elf. Whatever. And it never really seemed meaningful. Or at all important, and oftentimes it's something that you picked ends up never coming into play. So, what I like about this skill is that it totally turns that on its head. You don't pick languages at the beginning of the game. Rather, when you encounter a language, you roll to see if you know it, and of course it gets modified depending on how I put foreign the languages. Um, you get one chance to learn. You either know it or you don't. It's a very interesting skill. I'm writing a blog post on it. I'll be linking it in the comments below once I'm done. I'm trying to use it in the Lamentations of Elemental Evil campaign with made up, fantasy languages. It's actually a lot more challenging than I anticipated, but I mean that in a good way. Like I like the challenge of trying to make this work. So, but this is a really great skill, and as a quick anecdote, when I ran Death Frost Doom, I had a player make like an Indiana Jones type character who focused on architecture and language, and because of that combination, uh, he was actually able to discern a lot of the du Van coup, stuff, and actually help the party out a lot because the rest of them were kind of bumbling through, and I was just waiting for the bloodbath to happen. But anyway, very cool skill. All right, open doors. This is the second one that's modified by ability score, and this is strength. Now, clearly states this is not for a locked door. Okay, if you got a locked door, you got to use your tinker skill, or bash it down with like an axe if it's made out of wood, or a pickaxe if it's made out of stone. Otherwise, if it's a stuck door that needs some effort to get it open, you use this skill. And it can be modified with a crowbar or the help of fellow adventurer, and the door size and structure can incur penalties. Um, Clearly defining when this skill is used, I think read that a couple times because I've run into situations where people are like, oh, the door's locked. Well, I'm gonna use my open door skill. It's like, well, technically you can't do that. Technically you can't do it. Otherwise you'd be bypassing tinker skill, right? So yeah, read that 3 times. Commit it to memory. Search. This is exactly what it is. Find secret doors, compartments, or other things hidden from view. This is an active skill. You cannot be a second edition elf and just happen to walk by a concealed door and know it's there. You have to actually call out that you're going to be searching, and it's 10 feet per turn for a search roll. Referee does have some discretion to modify the difficulty of the search, and then it's noted in the rules that finding something doesn't mean you understand how it works. So if there's some locked, trapped door, doesn't mean you know it's a locked, trapped door. You just know it's a hidden door. If I may interject some GM advice from my own perspective, I would be I'd be very careful on how you use this skill. I think the search skill can be a crutch. I think a lot, especially like in some of the more modern iterations of role-playing games, the skill system ends up being a crutch, and you lose player creativity. So, for example, if there's a pouch of 30 gold pieces hidden under a loose stone in the floor of the right-hand corner of a room, and a player actually tells me, I'm going to search the right-hand corner of the room for any loose stones or something like that. They get very specific and very creative and sort of engaging in a an immersive sort of way. I'm not going to call for a roll. I'm going to say, yeah, you find 30 gold pieces because you're that specific. But then you're going to have players who are just like, yeah, I'm going to search the room. you know okay, make your roll, and if you're successful, maybe you find those 30 gold pieces. I think that's when how you should use the skills like this. But that's just me. Your mileage may vary. All right, sleight of hand. I like this skill. I love the fact that everyone can use it. It makes sense to me. It really ties into that sword and sorcery sort of skullduggery kind of thing going on, where like maybe Conan is in a bar or something, and you see some trouble, and he just slowly pulls out a dagger or something. It's not just for picking pockets. I love sleight of hand. I love that everyone can do it. And yeah, it's the Indiana Jones skill too. Like you're gonna swap out a weight object for on a weight sensitive plate. That sleight of hand is your skill, and this is not an exhaustive list. This should be a go-to for any kind of hidden motions, escamotage. I think it's a word, a synonym. Anything like that. Use this skill. Sneak attack. Okay, this is an interesting one. So, the number of ranks or pips on the die is the multiplier for your damage. So it's possible to do ×6 damage with sneak attack. And sneak attack applies whenever you attack from surprise. Very, very awesome skill to have for your specialist. Very awesome. What is interesting is that everyone has one rank in it. The magic user can sneak attack, but it's a ×1 multiplier, so it's not really going to amount to much. But I like that it's because of the consistency. They can still sneak attack, they can still leap from surprise and get that bonus to attack, but they're not going to get any bonus to damage because they're not a specialist in sneak attacking. Of course, I think that opens the door to a question of whether a zeroth level character can actually sneak attack. They might be able to jump out and surprise, but maybe they are incapable of uh, using that to their advantage. Maybe they won't get a bonus to attack or something, but that'll be, I guess, referee's discretion there. All right, stealth. For those who played the older editions, you had hide and you had move silently. Stealth combines the two. Um, this game clearly states the conditions upon which stealth applies. Because stealth is not invisibility, opponents must not already be aware of the character's presence, and it's conjunctive, and there must be some place to hide. If you are in a hallway that is empty, okay, it's just a hallway, and at the end of the hallway are two guards whose backs are to you, or two orcs, or whatever, some Cthulhu horror that doesn't see you, right? First condition is met. Second condition, not so much. So I don't know if I would call for a stealth check. I would certainly say they have surprise for other reasons because they don't know them. So I think at that point, the player has an option: run away or attack. But they're not going to be able to hide, in my opinion. So I appreciate that being clearly stated in the rules. I don't know how many conversations I've had with modern players who play the 5th edition of the world's most popular role-playing game and seem to think they can stealth around combat, hide from people that are like looking right at them. It's just making something like this clearly stated. I'm sure 5th edition has it stated somewhere as well, but clearly no one's reading that. It's much more clearly stated here. Anyway, attack from stealth is always considered a surprise attack. And then, of course, your sneak attack multiplier would apply. Tinkering. I love the name of this skill. I just love it. Again, this is combining the old school open locks and remove traps skills into one, and just defines it as manipulating small mechanical objects. Um, you have to have access to the trap's mechanism. So if there's a pressure plate and the mechanism is in the wall, you're not going to be able to disarm that trap unless you like excavate the wall and take it apart and gain access to it somewhere. It also doesn't apply to magical traps. Um, the entry here does recommend some other uses like setting traps, jury rigging impromptu devices, etc. This is a cool skill that I think if you're a creative player, you can do a lot with it. And so be creative, see what you can do with your tinkering, you get one attempt, of course, to do whatever it is that you're trying to do, and like in the old school days, you'd have to gain a level to try again. Okay, so there's some other skills out there that are not in the book. The Eldritch Cock playtest has 4 additional skills that you may be interested in. Leadership grants a temporary bonus to retainer morale. Failure incurs a penalty. I think it's a +2, -2. Very interesting. You might want to use that. I don't know if I'm going to in my current campaign because I've already done some stuff with like the backgrounds that kind of give bonuses to morale and the calculation of morale. But it is an interesting skill to have to include, generally speaking. Luck. Now this is kind of like the sneak attack. It's not a percentage chance. It's just It's just ranks and a number of times you can use it. The number of ranks is equal to the number of rerolls a player may use per game. This is kind of like a inspiration. And I think it's interesting that specialists can be very lucky. They probably have to be, considering they're the ones on, disarming traps that could explode and kill them. I might, if I were to use this, I might give a halfling additional luck because I don't know. I think halflings need a little bit more love, generally speaking, in the older versions of the game. Uh, because they're not fighters. They don't really have a whole lot of thiefy abilities. So I might house rule luck, give them a little extra, like maybe an extra rank per charisma bonus or something. Medicine. Okay, so this one is if you're successful, you gain double the hit points in recovery. So generally, if you rest in Lamentations, you get a hit point back. So someone with medicine administers to you and is successful, they'll get a an extra hit point back. I think there's a better skill out there, and I'm about to get to it. But medicine is certainly an option, and I think kind of blunts the lethality of the game just a little bit. And then seamanship. I'm actually surprised this wasn't in the main book. It's Bushcraft for water travel. I'm surprised it's not in the main book because there's an entire section in the main book which we will get to that's dedicated to sea adventures. Seamanship is in my game. I don't know if they're going to be sailing anytime soon, but it's definitely there. Okay, so without further ado, let's talk about Physique by Mark Hess. This is an awesome skill. You can find it in the first Flame Princess Cult zine, number one, published in July of 2020. It's a more realistic version of the medicine skill. I'm using it in my Lamentations of Elemental Evil campaign, but I'm calling it Chirurgeon just to kind of give it this sort of medieval sort of flair. Um, but success equals 1d3 hit points and can stabilize a dying character. It's modified by the conditions and use of specialist tools. So if you're out in the wild, you're going to have penalties. If you have your doctor's bag, you'll have a better chance of success. What I really like is critical failure can result in the character death. That's very realistic to me. You may incur hit point loss, you may sever a limb, or you just might kill the patient. It's a great risk reward game mechanic, and I highly recommend everyone use it. It's awesome. All right, other skills, magic. So, yeah, magic is listed as a common activity, like I said earlier. And it got me thinking about how adventurers, even the non-magical ones, should know a little something about magic. So I created a spellcraft skill. You can find it on my blog. The link will be below. I originally published in one of those zines, but that version sucks. Don't use that one. Use the one in my blog. It's got a spell mishap. So basically, if you're successful, you'll know a little something about whatever it is you're investigating. If you want to use a spell scroll, you can, but that'll incur a penalty, and that's when you could run into a spell mishap. And I got a D100 table that you can utilize. But yeah, check that out if you're interested. If you're interested in it. Okay, so my takeaway. This number one, and I probably should have actually wrote this down, but number one, this clearly defines what an adventurer is, and I think that really helps sets the tone of what the game's going to be about. Number two, this is a super simple way of designing skills unique to your game and or homebrew world. You can add whatever you think is necessary. You can take away whatever you think is necessary. If you're going to do something with a lot of social intrigue, you may be able to come up with some kind of skill where on a success you can get your player a bonus on the reaction roll while they're talking with an NPC. I don't know. That just came off the top of my head. But yeah, there's a lot you can do with this. I know in Veins of the Earth they kind of expand the climbing rules a little bit, which I should get to eventually. That's a really, really, really interesting book. And ultimately, task resolution is easy to calculate and resolve. What do I need to roll, referee? Oh, a D6, and let me know what you got. And that's it. So, anyway, thanks for watching, guys. That's it for today. I'll be continuing diving into this. We're going to continue playing Lamentations of Elemental Evil. I'm going to start prepping for a series of one-shots for the month of October. Every year I like to do Halloween one-shots and just try to create bloodbaths for my players. They usually like it. If you're interested, keep an eye out. I'm on a variety of Discords, and I'll be announcing those soon. Yeah, check out my blog. Hit like, subscribe, and the bell icon, the huge. And until next time, thanks for watching.